On today's Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast, Utah's trademark struggles. When are we going to get a name? Well, there's been a little light shed on why we don't know yet. Also, we've got some injury updates coming up for you, and we're going to evaluate Josh Doan, who's up at the big club right now. Stay tuned. All that more coming your way on the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.
You are Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Indeed, the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm veteran NHL voice Tom Callahan, joined by longtime team analyst Robyn Leaño, and on today's show, we're going to talk about why Utah Hockey Club still doesn't quite maybe sort of know what its name is yet. And also we have some injury updates for you. And we're going to talk a little bit about Josh Doan. Speaking of injuries, with Dylan Guenther out, Josh Doan has been up. So we're going to talk about him and how he's faring so far. But Robyn, the big one, and the story came out on KSL. And I thought it was a very interesting read to go through and take a look at really the struggles. And this is, I don't think something fans think about, but when you pick a name or names, you have to go through trademark procedures. And sometimes you hit some sticking points, and it appears those sticking points are what is keeping the Utah Hockey Club from coming up with a proper name.
Yeah, we've kind of just discussed this a while back, but it kind of wasn't real. It was like one of those, like, this is what we're hearing. Nothing has been, actually put out in the open. It's like, oh yeah, this seems to be what's happening. But now we know a lot more. And in this case, Utah's going into some trademark issues, and for anyone that has any idea or anything that they want to kind of put out into the world, knows, or potentially knows the struggles that you have to face when going through the U.S. Trademark and Patent Office, which is, an incredible amount of work you got to go through.
Yes, and I've reached out to Ryan Miller from KSL.com. Hopefully we hear back from him, and if we do, we will have that for you right here on the channel and get his thoughts about what's going on. But Robyn, to summarize the article, basically, and so some of this is not a surprise. We were talking about the name Yeti or Yetis. I know everybody's divided on the pluralization of Yeti, but there's already a very famous branded drinkware / cooler maker out there named Yeti. And so we knew this was a sticking point probably a couple of months ago, that this was something they were going through. So right now, that one doesn't necessarily actually seem likely, even though they may like it. So, but some of the other names are included in here as well. The Blizzard and the Venom, the U.S. Trademark Office turned those down because of a, quote, likelihood of confusion. And Utah Hockey Club, basically, it's saying those are all pretty generic terms. You can't really, you couldn't trademark, Utah. You can't trademark a proper name, that type of thing. Right. But the two names that right now, Robyn, and this is the more interesting part to me, other than the conflicts, because look, if you reach a monetary settlement with Yeti, then you'll be named Yeti. But the Utah Mammoth and the Utah Outlaws, those two names did not have the conflicting marks, and conflicting marks is what the Patent Office looks for, is for reasons why they would deny your claim. Right. There just needs to be some cleanup on those applications. So here's my question. I'm going to make you the owner of the Utah Hockey Club. Do you take the easy path and pick one of those two names? Do you try to get negotiations to continue with other entities to try to clear the way? What would you do right now, knowing that you're probably staring down a deadline that's a month and a half away for jersey, logo, all that?
That's a really good question. And to me, I think it's this would be my personal thing, and this would require actually having a quote big enough team for this. Is I would kind of split my resources a little bit. I'd have one team and be like, hey, I want you to work as hard as you can to figure out how we can, legally get, and be known as the Yeti or Yetis, because that is, without a doubt, the most popular name choice right now. Everyone wants that name. I'm not too worried about Venom or Blizzard. But for the two that aren't an issue, go to the other team and be like, all right, let's see if we can get some kind of mock-ups. Let's see if we can get some kind of design, because we want to be ready. We want something to deploy, ASAP.
I'm picturing this giant tusked Ice Age elephant-looking thing for the Mammoth, which the colors would already do well.
Colors would do great.
And you could take it in any direction you want. It could be realistic. It could be anthropomorphic. There's a lot of things you could do with it. But Outlaws, there's also a lot of cool things you could do with that. So I'm interested here, but I feel like everybody's had their heart set on Yeti or Yetis, both of which, by the way, are being met with roadblocks. So just because you pluralize it doesn't clear it out.
The original idea was to create the singular version because it's what sounded cool. The alliteration it just kind of seemed like it works. And I think when they ran into the issue they're like, hey, what if we added an S? And Trademark Office was like, nah, that's not good enough.
I guess we've also given up on the Utah Sasquatch. That would be my compromise name. That doesn't flow at all. That's a horrible idea.
That'd be a terrible idea.
But Robyn, this is a very real thing for this team because time is a waste in here. We're at the end of January.
Yeah. We're getting really close. I think at this point too, and I'm sure the NHL's waiting. Is like, hey, let's get in order for jerseys for next season. We want to get that done ASAP.
Well, and they do run those jerseys in the spring, and they set up the press and do one team at a time. So I'm sure Utah could get itself bumped all the way to the end of the list. I'm sure that's not a problem. But
especially if they go alphabetically, they'll already be towards the end.
Right. But you could ask a few teams behind you to cut up the line. But they do. They switch the presses over and run the whole ball of wax at one time, because this same factory doesn't only do hockey, they do tons of other sports too. So knowing that, when they do the run, so you can buy a little bit of time there, but you have to have everything in, set up, know your embroidery patterns and all of your breakdowns on your logos and your colors and all that stuff, and have it trademarked. Plus, on top of that, you got to grab things like websites and social media handles and everything that goes along with that. It's not as simple as it used to be.
And that's why, Tom, I proposed the idea and said what I would do is you gotta split your resources. I feel like this is like what I'm hoping Utah's doing. They have a dedicated team focusing on what they can do, how to really work with and see what is possible with the Yeti or Yeti's name. And then again, I would say, let's say Mammoth was the second most popular. Sure, again, I put Outlaws aside, but say Mammoth was the second most popular. You have another team's like, all right, let's create a whole identity, figure out everything, what it would look like. Because like I said, because you want to be ready. If you can't get it done by a deadline that the NHL would be looking for, you need to have something ready.
All the way down to the mascot.
Yep.
A lot that goes into it. What, folks, if you're listening, you're watching, throw down in the comments there what you would like to see as the name. If you want to see him try to forge ahead and find a compromise, and which will be financial, I'm sure, to end up with the name Yeti or something like that. Or if you're like, hey, you know what, at this point, Mammoth sounds good to me, Outlaws, whatever you like. I'm curious to see what everybody has to say. And by the way, while you're down there, go ahead and click the subscribe button. That helps us out. Give us a thumbs up.
I'll tell you, Tom, I'm still I only put Mammoth out there as an example there, but I'm torn between the secondary option. I think both would be great, and it was as you kind of already discussed.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things you could do with it. I honestly, if it's not Yeti, I'm going to pull for Mammoth. That's just me. So I mean, Outlaws would be cool. It would.
Just don't tell that to Craig Morgan.
You know what? That's fine. Craig and I can agree to disagree on that. So I have no problem with that.
I just like pulling his leg.
He definitely has feelings about things. He definitely has feelings.
And he doesn't mind really sharing those feelings.
Yes.
And I like that about him.
Yes, absolutely. It makes for some fun moments and some enlightening discussions. So, all right. Well, we've got some injury updates to get to. Plus, we want to talk about Josh Doan a little bit more on today's show as well. So, why don't we do that here in just a moment? And today's show is brought to you in part by SelectQuote. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, the Olympics, and the same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion with a B billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage of up to $5 million with no medical exam required. And it's more affordable than you'd think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Go to selectquote.com/lockedonnhl today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. SelectQuote. They shop, you save. And so as we come back here, Robyn, it's been an interesting year for Utah. The whole the fast move, the figuring out the name, the colors, all that stuff, then going with the generic name for year one. Now we're trying to figure out the trademark struggles. But the other struggle this team has had has been on the ice, keeping guys healthy. And I actually kind of hate. I'm just going to go ahead and say this. I hate that we have to talk about injuries so much. I would much rather be talking about hockey. I'd much rather be talking about hot and cold streaks, winning and losing streaks, breaking down some games. But I feel like almost every show, we have to circle back to injuries. And I hate that for the Utah Hockey Club, but that is the reality of this season.
And it's funny because if you go back, like one of the things that we get told when we're setting up for a preview for the season, Tom, it's like, hey, what builds a successful season for this team? And obviously we have a lot of reasons. We said, hey, this is X, Y, and Z would be successful at Utah Hockey Club. One of the things we're told that we can't say, that we can't talk about what would be successful, is to stay healthy, because come on, that you can't do it. There's nothing you can do about that. But it's just frustrating because in this case for Utah, it's like, can we just be healthy for once?
I know these guys need their Flintstone vitamin intake doubled. I don't know what's going on. It's hard. And some teams seem to get bitten by this. And this year it's Utah's turn. The defensive injuries obviously have been mounting. And so this is kind of where we come in with the injury updates. So not much has changed on Sean Durzi, who hasn't played since October, but Robyn, the latest that we have on Durzi is the potential to come back in April. Now, by the time April rolls around, will Utah Hockey Club be clamoring for a playoff position? I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. I can say this. I can see him returning either way, because at first I thought, well, if you're in a playoff push, yeah, bring him back. But if you're not, I mean, why bring him back? Why risk it? But I think they're spacing it out enough. Number one, shoulder injuries, especially if they're recurring, just get worse and worse and worse every time. So don't rush the guy back. But I think there is value to having him play some games at the end of the season, especially with a healthy Marino, a healthy Sergachev, which we don't have right now. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And then down the lineup, now that we're past the trade deadline, there's probably going to be some guys who aren't here that are here right now. So you're going to have a better idea of what your playoff roster might look like, or what you're going to have heading into next year. So I think that that's important too. So I do see value for Durzi coming back either way, regardless if they're in or out of the playoff conversation.
Yeah, I would definitely love to see Durzi come back. Obviously, I would do not want to rush it. Especially with those kind of injuries, it's just not, we don't want to test fate here. We don't want to do that. But again, we want to have him back as soon as possible because, we need, the Utah Hockey Club needs a little bit of extra support. It's good that Marino's back. That kind of really does help out, and it's good that other players have stepped up. But you still need, because Jersey is still one of the top 2 defensemen on this team, and you need that. Him coming back practically towards the end of the season projection, at that point, it's all right. Is this team 2 points out of a playoff spot, and will Jersey come back really make that difference to get in? Or I think they very well could get down to that, Tom. It'd give me a heart attack.
Well, I think Jersey automatically adds to your offense. Your power play gets better with him.
Oh, yeah.
Your scoring opportunities get better with him. But then defensively, are you getting a little weaker? How are you going to juggle the pairs? Because it was Sergachev and Jersey, but that was before you had Ole Mata.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that Mata's in there, he's more of a defensive stalwart. And let's talk about this for just a second. You and I initially projected Marino into top 2 minutes, and then I really started to dig inside his numbers, and I said, you know what? No, he's probably going to be more a 3-4 guy.
Mm-hmm.
But since he's come back because of all the injuries, guess what? He's a 1-2 guy. He's right back on the top pair anyway.
I personally had him on that 1-2. I think mainly because of how I saw it the smarter way to deploy your defense. Right? I was like, all right, I want, let's say, like Sergachev and Marino on your top pair, and then Jersey and Cole on your second, or whatever it was, right? Whatever it was at the time. I don't even remember what it was at that time, because that feels so long before, because we didn't even know Marino was not gonna be with this team for the first several months until you just joined the team last week.
Yeah, and in the meantime, they've had to go out. They had to get Bortuzzo, who's also been banged up on and off this year.
Mm-hmm.
Ian Cole we knew he was coming in, but now they've also acquired Nick DeSimone, Ole Mata. So you already brought in 3 defensemen this year, and which you didn't plan on doing.
And
you
don't
had
forget
basically
they called up earlier Maverick Lamoureux, who's back with Tucson.
Right, and he was playing well.
Mm-hmm.
He was playing well, but then he got hurt. And so, now it's just such a crazy thought process here, because I really feel like at the deadline, if Utah says, okay, let's just say Jersey is on track, looks good, everything's good, we'll have him back maybe early April. I think that allows them to be, and I keep using this phrase, cautious sellers. Doesn't mean they're not buyers, doesn't mean they're not going to go for it. But what they have is a position of strength, because they have some cap room, and they have what will turn into an overabundance of defensemen.
Yep.
And someone is always looking for defensemen come trade deadline, especially if they're right-hand shots.
Oh yeah, and I think that you can certainly see, for me, what I would call, in terms of what I can do, I can literally just call it, like some of their players, just trade bait them. Give them their minutes and trade bait them, because you want to, like Bill Armstrong knows very well how to play the hand that he gets, and he's done a phenomenal job on making some great deals of trades. And I could very well see that happen. We'll definitely have a more in-depth couple of trade deadline episodes as we approach that.
Oh yeah,
we're still a little bit away for that. But if you aren't subscribed yet, subscribe to the show, and we will definitely talk about that as we get closer and really kind of dive into a strategy of how that's going to work, and how Jersey plays into that, as you're going to focus on now what's a shifting blue line going to look like, how things are going to really shake up, as they maybe by that point actually push for a playoff spot. We won't know.
Sergachev is still out with day-to-day upper body, but Robyn, hopefully sooner than later, maybe even travel on this trip, perhaps see Sergachev. Although, coming off that big win at home over Utah, over Winnipeg to start the week. That's a big win over the Jets, that 5-2 victory. So does that maybe give you a little bit of confidence to say with a player like Sergachev, he could play if he had to, but let's rest him one more game?
Yeah, absolutely. His focus is, and again, this kind of goes with the idea I had with Dursey as well. So you don't, and this is a different situation since Sergachev is really only day to day. But if it's, I have that philosophy. It's like if you're not 100%, don't come back. I want you 100%. I want you ready to play at your peak, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for. Especially too, if John Marino is playing well on the blue line, and showing really like he's fitting in pretty darn well on like essentially 1-2 minutes. I don't see a reason right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the other injury that I wanted to update, Dylan Guenther, lower body, still indefinite. We don't really have an answer for that, but the guy who's come up in his stead is Josh Doan. So Robyn and I are going to talk a little bit about Josh and how he's been filling in for the injured Dylan Guenther.
And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is really easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. And I know that Tom, he probably has his camera turned off, that he's smiling, getting ready for his Buffalo Bills as they go into the conference championships here. But hey, you know what? I'll give it to him. He's got an exciting time for him. FanDuel's going to place, but maybe he can place some bets and see what add some little bit extra fun. Who knows? FanDuel.com. Join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League.
Robyn, take it to the bank. Josh Allen, anytime touchdown, and Cook 60+ yards running. Take it to the bank.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Josh Allen was on my fantasy team this season and took me to
the power of Josh Allen.
I at this point I don't want to give him up going into next season because it's
why would you?
He's too good. He's too good.
Fantasy value is insane with Josh Allen just because he runs, he throws, he scores touchdowns, right? I mean, he's a huge go-to option in the goal line area. So anyway, I digress. But since we were talking FanDuel for a second there, you're right. I was smiling. You're right. I'm excited. I'm excited for the matchup against the Chiefs here. All right. So we talked about Utah's trademark struggles. We've talked about the injury updates, and Dylan Guenther goes down. Josh Doan comes up. So the way I wanted to start this, kind of looking at what Doan's doing, is by way of saying, here's what Guenther has done. We know he got off to a crazy hot streak, 7 goals in about 30 seconds to start the regular season, cooled off a little bit. But Robyn, I felt like he was starting to find his stride. 40 games played, 16 goals, 34 points. So almost a point a game, +4, which is also good. 7 power play goals, tied for the team lead with Logan Cooley. That's something hard to replace. And also his 3 game winners tied for second with Sergachev. Keller and Hayton actually tied for third technically. Keller and Hayton have 4 game winners. So that's what you're trying to replace. Josh Doan this year in 15 games, 2 goals, 5 points. So about a third point a game as opposed to almost a full point a game. But does have a power play goal and doesn't have any game winners or anything like that. He's only got 21 shots though and a 9.5 shooting percentage. So I wanted to start by talking about Doan, who's only 22. He's been developing, Robyn, and you've been keeping an eye on Doan ever since he entered the organization.
Oh, yeah.
Think back to the original upside of Josh Doan to where he is now. Has he projected out to where they saw him, above that, below that? What are your thoughts?
I think it's interesting. To me, I think he's definitely played like above those expectations. To me, like, here's the thing: when he first came in, I wasn't one of the people that was like, oh, this is like, I like it, even though it's quote nepotism pick because he drafted by the Arizona Coyotes. Anyone knows the legacy that his father left with that franchise. And so I was like, oh man, it's really cool, but like, what's his true upside? And I found out he was a scorer. He knew how to play. He's got the speed. As I really took into look his stats that he played with the Chicago Steel of the USHL, I was like, okay, I'll give a little bit more of him. Then I saw him play at ASU, and I'm like, okay, even more. I see it. But now that he's actually playing in the NHL and getting those minutes, every time he gets that call up, whether it was that at the end of the season at the Arizona Coyotes last year, or at this point, after getting sent back down, called back up, he always rises to the challenge on proving why he belongs in the National Hockey League. And
I think with that nameplate on his jersey, there is pressure to do that. I mean, anyone who is a Jets/Coyotes, and I'm talking Jets 1.0 aficionado, knows, what his dad meant to that franchise. And I realize, for the sake of technicalities, it's a different record book.
It is a different record book. Yeah. But so it's not there. But what's interesting, though, if you watch one of the broadcasts, that Shane Doan did show up on the Utah Hockey Club SCG broadcast, and went to and talked about it. Of course, you could tell he's a proud dad. Oh yeah, and as he should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. He is. He's a very proud papa, and I love to see that. And you know what? One of the things I wanted to talk about this too, Robyn, because in looking at Josh Doan this year, I said 5 points, right, in 15 games, but 3 of those points have come in his last 4 games. Mm-hmm. He had a couple of assists against Winnipeg, was +2 in that game. This is what I liked. He really seems more comfortable this time around, I think, being able to move the puck, buy himself a little bit of time. His vision, I think, is better with every game. I think his confidence is probably better with every game. Not that the skills aren't there, but it's just having the confidence to trust your instincts and use those skills. This is where I feel like the growth of Doan is occurring.
And you couple that in with a point I made in one of the previous episodes with his skating. He's been great at his skating. He's got some serious speed. And I mean, certainly it helps a bunch in his favor.
Yes. Look, my number one tip, if you have a child who wants to make the NHL or any level of pro hockey, what is the most important thing you can do? It is be the best skater you can possibly be. Because what separates guys with a hard shot, soft hands, killer hand-eye coordination, and a great hockey IQ in the minor leagues from those guys in the NHL, skating.
Yep.
It's not even close. Even the tough guys, the goons, can skate, and they can skate real well.
Yeah. I mean, take a look at, someone who everyone's considering the greatest of this generation. I should say the greatest of this generation, and Connor McDavid as a really quick example here is, during the quote peak era, I would say, I'm using quotes here, but when everyone was watching the fastest skater competition in the All-Star weekend, everyone had their eyes on Connor McDavid, because all right, let's see how well this guy can skate. And he would go speeds of 40 miles an hour, and would get around the entire perimeter of a rink in 13 or less than seconds. Jesus.
And you see that in a game too. He's got that burst, right? Mm-hmm. He's at the blue line, 2 defenders in front of him. He's at the top of the circle behind the defenders. How? He's got a burst. He has that extra, and he's fluid in his motions. It's because he can do so much on his skates. The other guy I want to talk about, who I think is the best skater of this era, is Cale Makar. Makar
100%.
is not only good going forwards, but is excellent going backwards and laterally, left and right.
That's
You
what
watch
makes
Makar
him
keep
phenomenal
pucks in
deep.
at the blue line. Robyn, nobody is better on his edges in the league than Makar. Amazing skater.
Yeah, and that's why he's very, very much always in the conversation for like a Norris Trophy. Because like, I mean, come on, how many defensemen can match up to that level of skating?
He's the best defenseman of his generation.
Yeah,
I don't think it's a contest.
There is no debate, honestly. I mean, like
You can bring Hughes, you can bring Fox, you can bring anybody you want to me. I am going to pick Cale Makar every time.
And not to say they're bad. They're great.
No, they're
defensemen.
excellent.
They're excellent defensemen, but Cale Makar is on another level.
He is. He's another plane of existence. So, but it's because of his skating.
Yeah, but that's the point I'm making about Josh Doan. Is Josh Doan's got some great skating, and I feel like that's going to help him. He's still early. He's still developing. I mean, look, he was drafted in the second round, right? Second round of the draft a couple years back, and like that. I mean, still second round is still no small feat. It's like being drafted is no small feat, but he still needs to prove himself, and I feel like that's going to help him a whole bunch.
And I know that once Guenther returns to the lineup, Doan will probably head back down and continue to develop in Tucson with the Roadrunners, which I love. But I think this shot of confidence, I bet you, if we track his numbers before this call-up and then after, I bet you his numbers in Tucson get better.
Oh, yeah.
I could absolutely see that.
As long as he keeps that, the positive mentality, because there are players out there who, even though they know that's, for a quote valid reason, they can't keep him up or whatever, they throw little hissy fits whenever they get sent down. And if we're talking about different position, but cough, cough, Aiden Hill, I'm looking at you when you were in Arizona Coyote.
He was sour about it. Yeah, I get it. Remind me to tell you at some point, or I don't even know if it's a story worth telling, about the whole kerfuffle over him wearing black pads. That was a thing back in the day. But anyway, Robyn, anything else you want to toss in here at the end of it all?
No, I feel like we covered it all. I feel like we kind of had a great conversation about all this.
All right. On our next show, we are going to talk about the Minnesota Wild game coming up. Don't forget, it's back-to-back on the road, Minnesota and Winnipeg, coming up here Thursday, Friday for the Utah Hockey Club. So Robyn and I are going to preview those two games during the week as well. If you're still here, hey, click that subscribe button. If you give us a like as well, a thumbs up if you're on the YouTube side, that helps us, helps you with the algorithm. And also it really just makes our day if you click the bell, because then you know when the shows drop all the time. So we try our best to be consistent. But Robyn, for instance, I know this is coming out on a Wednesday afternoon. And if you have the bell clicked, you will know that as soon as everything drops for you. So Robyn, where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, they can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Robyn with a Y _LEANO, and on Blue Sky at Robyn Icetime.
Awesome. I'm at Tom Talks on Blue Sky. Hope you can find me over there. And that is generally where I hang out these days. So that is your best bet if you want to get a hold of me. And also, you can check out the show. Robyn, we're absolutely everywhere, I think, on social media. I mean, the only thing we might not have is a MySpace page.
That'd be funny if we did, right? No, but yeah, we're absolutely everywhere. You can find us on Facebook, and you just got to search up the name of the podcast. You can find us on Instagram, on Threads, on X, all at LO_NHL Utah, by the way, for those. Also on Blue Sky at Locked On Utah Hockey. The same for on TikTok for as long as TikTok will still remain online.
Back for now.
At least, yep, back for now. So it's gonna remain online. We're gonna start posting more shorts and give you little clips. Maybe if you missed a little tidbit of an episode, we'll post little clips of those. So maybe highlights in case you missed it. You're like, oh, I want to check out the rest. We'll link you to the full episodes on all those.
Absolutely. So thanks everybody for being a part of the show here today. We appreciate you being along for the ride with us. And keep it tuned here. We've got a couple of big games coming up on the road this weekend to talk about. So for Robyn, Leaño, I'm Tom Callahan. This has been the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.